you from the 37th parallel on America's haunted highway, it's Pixelated Paranormal, your guide to the unusual and the strange.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Pixelated Paranormal. This is episode 335. It's Friday the 13th, and my name is Shawn. With me, as always, is Preston. Preston, buddy, how are you?
What's up, all you cool ghosts and goblins, you crocodoons and crocodingos, you skeletors, skelerettes, and witchers and witches, and whatever the fuck else you want to be? I'm all right. I almost died in Arizona, going there on a plane because the back flaps went out. 5 plane rides later, made it, landed. Santana's fucking old. Had to go have back surgery. Didn't go to a concert. Drank a lot of beer. Saw the Grand Canyon, which is a giant hole in the ground in case anybody was wondering. And saw some very old graves. Some guy accidentally got hung. The townspeople were wrong. They felt bad about it, but they hung him anyways. That's all I got. That's all I got.
I misunderstood you for a second and literally thought you meant while you were there, somebody was accidentally hung.
That would have been the icing on the cake right there. I would have been like, shit, Saul hanging. God damn.
Yeah, man. Yeah. We had to take a little bit of a hiatus because, we both had some trips that came up in the last few weeks. You went to Arizona, and then, you had a hell of a treacherous journey there. And then your concert got canceled. You drank a bunch of alcohol, got home. And not only do you live out in the middle of nowhere, but you lost your internet for like a fucking week after you got home.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been kind of quiet on the old 37th parallel, but we're back together again for another exciting episode of Pixelated Paranormal. And I partly didn't want to do too long of an episode because I don't want to do like a 2-hour long episode and your internet cut out. So we got a little shorter episode today, just in case something happens. But I think you're out of the woods,
hopefully,
technologically speaking, anyway. So before we get too much farther, though, should I jump over and make sure the audio sounds okay?
Yeah, you probably should. I did the whole entire time I was. The whole entire time I was flying, I kept looking out the window to make sure there were no goddamn plane goblins on the wings. Probably what happened to the goddamn back flaps. So
they could have been, man. You're trying to recreate terror at 20,000 feet, and you just jinxed the place.
I'm tired of these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking plane.
No shit, dude.
Yeah.
No shit. Well, as the namesake says, this episode we're going to have a little chitter chat about Friday the 13th. Not just the incredibly awesome horror movie franchise, but also a little bit of the past and where the holiday kind of came from, what inspired it, and so on and so forth. Excuse me. And I promised Preston, I showed him this really badass sticker my wife got me. It's David Bowie and Jason Voorhees. I promised Preston if he was a good little boy, at the end of the episode, I would tell him how David Bowie and Friday the 13th actually come together, and hopefully you don't just skip to the end of the Google Doc and ruin it for yourself.
No, I didn't. I actually closed out the Google Doc and switched over to Restream so I can monitor the comments while you pilot the episode. So
nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Very good. That's what's called teamwork. That's what happens when you work together as a team.
Yeah, there you go, man. Well, friends and folks, it's Friday, but not just any Friday. It's Friday the 13th. Here we are in a very last-minute recording session, and we want to talk about what's going down with all the spooky vibes, the black cats, and the number 13 associated with this really bizarre holiday. It's not just about the Friday the 13th franchise from the 80s. It's about a lot more. So shall we jump into a little bit of the history before we talk about the films?
Yeah, fuck you, France, and
fuck
you, Pope, for killing all those guys all those years ago. They didn't deserve it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, a lot of weird stuff has happened on Friday the 13th. The first one I'll talk about here is right up your alley. There's a lot of instances of death that are associated with Friday the 13th. But one especially troubling scenario is that of the death of more than 100 of the Knights of Templar who were tortured and murdered by France's King Philip IV back on Friday the 13th of 1307.
I know
like
you probably
mentioned, the Pope had his fingers in that pie.
Yeah, I know you didn't put this into the doc, but because I am a Mason, this is like one of those things that history-wise really fascinates me. So imagine that the King of France was really like King Robert of Game of Thrones. He liked drinking and he liked fucking, and he kept asking everybody for loans of money, and he kept pouring his way out of that money, and eventually the Templars said, go get fucked. We're not giving you any more money because you're just going to hoard and drink, yourself into a hole. So he got mad. Conspiracy theory, boom, pops up. And so, look, if you want to get somebody to admit that they worship Satan, or really just to say anything that you want them to say, torture is the way to go. And boy, did they torture these boys. Let me tell you what, they would lay them down on a wooden table and strap them in, and they would take lard or pig fat, and they would just smother and just coat the bottoms of the little feetsies and pig fat, and they take this candle and they'd get right up close, and that heat from the candle would start to burn the pig fat. It's like making barbecue, baby. Shit. Slow cook barbecue, and their feet would get all crispy, and by the time that they were done, all the skin would just fall right off the bone like good old Kansas City barbecue, and they would admit to anything that you want them to admit to, and they're like, boom, Satan worshiper. Get them all. And also, Pan of Gold over on Kickstart. Get the fuck out of here. I hate bots. Hello, great streamer. I really love your content. Stick with me, and for $1,500, we can get you 5,000 plus followers. No, fuck off, bots.
That's a lot of money for bot followers too, man. I don't think it costs nearly that much anymore. They're a little late to the game, man.
Yeah,
they treated the Knights of Templar kind of like Waffle House hash browns, dude. Just smothered, covered, and burnt to a fucking crisp. What a gosh darn shame.
Oh, yeah. Wait, hold on.
And
for anybody else who's watching on YouTube and Rumble, before you comment and say for $1,500, you'll get us 5,000 followers, go get fucked. We're not into it. Okay. We want the real listeners. We want the conspiracy theorists. We want the people that are here to listen to the content, not to take our money and give us fake subscribers. So look, if you're a panhandler, get the fuck out of here. But thank you for watching.
Yeah. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. Oh, fuck me. Well, if you don't buy into the whole Masonry and Knights of Templar, maybe you're a bit more of a Christian or of the religious type. It's also said that Friday the 13th is associated with Jesus Christ himself. See, the number 13 is also associated with Jesus and the Last Supper. You know the story. Jesus and like 11 of his friends or 12 of his friends show up. They have the Last Supper. And Judas rears his dirty little ugly face. He betrays Jesus.
Goddamn,
you know the
Judas.
rest of the story. And supposedly, Judas, the 13th disciple or whatever he was, he shows up, fucks things up. Jesus dies on a Friday. Again, a lot of people associate Friday the 13th with good old Christ himself. But I would say it's not the only system that did believe that Friday the 13th was associated with their deities. You see, the number 13 is also associated with Norse mythology. There's a story of the last dinner in Valhalla. I'll get to that here in a minute. Let's jump back over here to WRAL News. In I always want to call it North. In Norse mythology, 13 is unlucky because of the story of the dinner party, or middag, a Norwegian term for a late afternoon meal. According to legend, 12 gods were hamming it up in Valhalla, but nobody invited Loki to the party. But that's okay. The trickster god himself got the memo and showed up as a 13th guest, and then convinced another god to kill his own brother, messing things up. And as the story goes, it really ensued a lot of chaos. So a lot of Norse believers believe that Friday the 13th is incredibly lucky because of the 13th party member, so to speak. So whether you're a Christian or you believe in Norse mythology, number 13, man, don't be the 13th person invited to the party. Going back over to the old Christian side of things, Friday is also said to be the day that Adam and Eve ate that forbidden fruit. Apparently, Friday is also the day of the week that Cain killed his brother Abel, and the Temple of Solomon fell on Noah's Ark also set sail. A lot of interesting stuff happened. Also, there's a novel with the same name, hugely popular in 1907, about a stockbroker who seeks help after the market ruins his family. But you guys know, if you hold on a second, my damn cat. Sully, what are you doing, you fucker? I've got this cat, and he just seems to love to chew on plastic. Get down. No, get down. Bastard. I've got a cat who likes to chew on plastic like a billy goat. Unfortunately, he ruins a lot of important stuff, like art. Anyway, you fast forward to the 1980s, and you got a guy in a hockey mask slashing through boxes and people and everything else. And now all of a sudden, we have Friday the 13th launching itself into pop culture. But a lot of other weird shit happened on Friday the 13th as well. With noting, back in 1940 during World War II, Buckingham Palace was bombed on Friday the 13th in September. Back in 1972, two different planes crashed on Friday, October the 13th, one in the Andes. In 2012, the Costa Concordia sank on the coast of Italy. It's the largest passenger ship to ever sink. Yes, bigger than the Titanic. And while you ask, no, the Titanic did not sink on the 13th, but rather on April 14th. But the point is, you can kind of see why the number 13 and the day of the week Friday get a bad rap. Very interesting. Lots of really, really bad shit happened. We also have a story about the Apollo 13 crew back on April 13th, 1970. The crew members almost died because their mission was not really sabotage, but the mission went awry when one of the vessel's oxygen tanks exploded on the 13th back in 1970. Thankfully, though, to NASA, all 7 members of the Apollo 13 crew did survive the incident, but not to say it was without some peril. And for those of you who don't believe in conspiracy theories, back on March 13th, 2020, that's when President Trump issued a White House proclamation saying Friday the 13th, back in March, COVID-19 was declared a national emergency.
Ooh, maybe you shouldn't have
there
brought
you
that.
Are. I thought I lost you there.
You were getting kind of choppy, so I shut my video off for a second and maybe help the upload. Anyways, I don't think you should actually have mentioned that last one because you episode 18, like 4 years ago, you brought up Trump, Trump, and fucking YouTube was like, we're sorry guys, we're gonna have to ban your video because you just mentioned a name and talked about a conspiracy theory, and that goes against everything YouTube stands for. So we're pulling down the whole fucking gig. God dang it.
Yeah. No, it wasn't. It wasn't former President Donald Trump that I was talking about. It was another guy running for office who had a really racist quote in his campaign. I'm not even going to say it because YouTube pulled episode 18 off of our channel because it said we were spreading false information, violating their conspiracy theory policy. So anywho, so if you want to hear that, you can jump on Spotify on the original stream and probably catch.
You can't even make fun of people now. You know, somebody says something stupid and you want to make a good quip about it.
Man.
They just you're spreading conspiracies. No, we're being facetious, YouTube. God dang it. Get your shit together.
Yeah, that was really sad, man. I think I might actually appeal that. But we had an episode of the show pulled down. Of all the things we talked about in 9 years, we had an episode pulled down because we were quoting somebody's incredibly racist campaign. Fucking shit bonkers. I don't even know who we were talking to either. I think I said that guy that ran for office who's blah, blah, blah. But anyway, it's fucking stupid. Really, really fucking stupid. But anyway, all that to say, you guys want some fun facts about Friday the 13th?
Lay it on me, baby.
The movie series?
Yeah.
All right, pal. First things first, the OG Friday the 13th was a surprise at the box office back in 1980. It's set to take place in the fictional Crystal Lake, a summer camp that was closed because a child named Jason drowned when counselors were watching him. It started a revenge film series that evolved into a franchise about a silent killer wearing a mask. Since its debut, there have been 12 total the 13th movies to take place, including Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. The original finale called Part 4, The Final Chapter, Part 5, The New Beginning, Part 6, Jason Lives, Part 7, The New Blood, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Then we have Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, Jason X, where we sent him to outer space, Freddy vs. Jason back in 2003, where everybody got what they finally wanted in Jason Freddy, and then again Friday the 13th, the reboot in 2009, which kind of wrangles the first three films in one pretty badass modern remake. The majority of the sequels take place, though not all, at the same lake drowned in, known as Camp Crystal Lake. The first fun fact here is Camp Crystal Lake used to be called. Camp Crystal Lake actually was. Sorry. Camp Crystal Lake is actually part of a real-life camp called Nobi Bosco in New Jersey. But anyway, first up in these fun facts, spoiler alert, the original film back in 1980 or 1996 saw Drew Barrymore seen in Scream. It's not Jason himself who's the killer. It's none other than Mrs. Voorhees, played by Betsy Palmer, who's the original killer. She's haunted by her son's drowning. She went on a revenge spree when Camp Crystal Lake reopened. The story is explored further in the books, but you guys kind of get the gist. The film's about a murderous mother who wants to kill all the camp counselors who are smoking pot, playing board games, and boning in tents. Well, if you're a fan of the film like I am, you know that in most of them, it features Jason hearing his mom's voice saying, "Kill them, kill for mommy." But did you know the famous sound effect used in most of the films was Harry Manfredini, the musical composer, who uses his own voice to mimic that of Jason, saying, "Kill, kill, kill, mom, mom, mom," which then he slowed down and ran through a delay effect microphone to create a really interesting sound effect. Originally, that sound effect was supposed to be Jason telling his mom to kill, revenge his death. Later on in the films, of course, we hear that and it leads us to believe that it's actually Jason's mom now ironically telling him to kill for her. Anyway, of course, we know his mom's the first killer, and from then on, we have this gigantic brute known as Jason just treating people left and right. Our first glimpse of this little bitty bulbous-headed Jason Voorhees is when he jumps out of the lake at the end of the first movie, and then Jason goes on to become the antagonist of the next 11 films. But did you know that Jason originally wasn't named Jason? This gigantic brute slasher's name was supposed to be Josh. How odd would that have been, Preston? Can you imagine it? Josh Takes Manhattan?
Oh, Jesus.
Sounds kind of lame, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh.
Right? But that's not the only name that got changed. Originally, the first name chosen for the film was not Friday the 13th, but actually Long Night Camp Blood. But that sounded just a little bit off and a very big mouthful. So Leo decided to change the name to something shorter that would be a lot easier to say and kind of piggyback off the success of other holiday-themed slashers like Black Christmas and Halloween. And the film's writer Victor Miller admitted that he was even a huge fan of John Carpenter's Halloween, noticing the success. And director John Cunningham even approached Halloween producer Irwin Yablans to produce the film, but he declined because he wasn't interested in doing any more horror movies at the time. Speaking of holidays, due to the film's namesake, only the first two movies actually take place on the unlucky date. with Part 2 taking place 5 years after the first film, which took place on Friday the 13th. But did you know that actually from then on, films no longer take place on an ironic holiday? Part 3 is actually taking place the day after Part 2, would be Saturday the 14th. And then Part 4 technically takes place 2 days later, being Sunday the 15th and Monday the 16th. And so quickly, the movie kind of falls off of the whole joke of being on Friday the 13th, but that's how franchises work, so we don't change the name. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about Jason, shall we? Most of us know that Jason, who was originally played by Ari Lehman when he was just a small lad, was just a boy back in Friday the 13th, with again that spooky, deformed head of his. It wasn't until Part 2 where we get to see him as a full-blown adult. Homeboy must have found some kind of Wheaties or something special, because hot damn, after 5 years of being this tiny pipsqueak, the guy blew up in just 5 short years, where famously in Part 2 he wears a gunny sack on his head instead of his token hockey mask. But Preto dear, do you know why Jason wore a gunny sack in the first film where he was actually the killer?
No, lay it on me, baby.
I'm gonna lay it on you, pal. Pretty simple shit, man. Old movie magic. According to co-producer Dennis Stewart Murphy, the idea to have Jason wear a burlap sack over his head in Part 2 comes from the costume designer, who figured if you're a raging killer who somehow survived the first film and want to go on a murdering spree, what is something you can easily get a hold of and procure to hide your face? Well, a gunny sack. So literally, that's why he wears a bag. Good old-fashioned costume design and cheap budgets. They found a bag, they tore one hole in it, and threw it over the deformed face. And here's a funny story. See, on Part 2, the actor Warrington Gillette, who plays the baghead Jason, actually auditioned to be a camp counselor. He's a pretty good-looking dude. Even now, if you look at him, pictures, pretty handsome fellow. His agent got him a chance to read for the film. He thought he was going to be one of the hunky camp counselors who's boning chicks all day and all night. But instead, he doesn't get casted as a counselor. But they liked him, and due to the fact that he had some stuntman schooling, they give Warrington Gillette a bag over his head and allowed him to be filmed as Jason throughout various scenes of the film, most of all where he jumps through and has the bag pulled off of his head. Another fun fact for super fans of Jason, in this film, the character is dressed to look just like the killer from The Town That Dreaded Sundown. The difference is the burlap sack that Jason wears only has one eye hole, where in The Town That Dreaded Sundown, the killer has 2 eye holes in his sack. Anyway, Jason didn't pick up the now trademarked hockey mask in Part 3. But fun fact here, for those of you with a keen eye, in a lot of cases, Part 3 and Part 5, you can see that the mask wasn't quite the same goalie mask he wears. That's because originally it wasn't supposed to be a hockey goalie mask, but instead a baseball umpire mask. But rumor has it the umpire mask would also require too much special practical effect makeup for Jason's deformed face underneath. And so again, we have a really keen costume designer who says, well, we can save a lot of money to do these practical effects if we just slap a big, hard goalie mask over his face. And let's face it, I think a goalie mask is just a little bit more scary than an umpire mask. But anyway, from that point, about halfway through Part 3, Jason now sports the token trademark hockey mask. All in all, Jason goes on to slaughter 167 people over the course of 12 different films, the least deadly film being 1981's Friday the 13th Part 2, where he only kills 10 people, including impaling a couple having sex with the same spear. The highest body count is that of 28 deaths that he was responsible for in Jason X, aka Jason Goes to Space. Overall, oddly enough, 13 different actors have portrayed Jason Voorhees. Some portraying the silent killer in flashback scenes or as a child, but only one actor who took on the role more than once is responsible for portraying Jason Voorhees 4 different times. That of Kane Hodder. Kane played the part of Jason Voorhees in Part 7, The New Blood, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, and Jason X. Now, rumors kind of go left and right about why they had different people playing Jason. The most important would be that if you have somebody come back more than 2 times, they're considered a star and they just cost more money. But again, another fun fact here. Super nerds like myself know that in Part 6, Jason Lives, you had a guy named C.J. Graham who famously portrayed Jason. Well, in Part 6 originally, Dan Bradley, a crew member, was supposed to play Jason, but on the first day of shooting, which is why you might notice Jason's build is a lot more scrawny during the paintball scene, producers realized that Dan Bradley's overall frame just wasn't quite imposing enough to portray Jason, so they decided, hey, we should probably recast this guy before we get too far into filming. So if you pay close attention, you're going to notice shortly after the paintball scene, Jason's physique blows up a hell of a lot bigger, because now we have a 6'3" tall former nightclub owner named C.J. Graham, who portrays Jason only in Part 6, Jason Lives. See, Graham was actually doing some kind of gig at a nightclub dressed up as a Jason Voorhees character, so he impressed the casting directors for the film who were already in search of a new Jason because they just happened to stumble in and see the guy's show. Thus, Dan Bradley was let go of the position, and C.J. Graham would go on to portray Jason in potentially one of the most imposing renditions of the Masked Killer. Then after Graham played in Part 6, the immortal Kane Hodder would go on to breathe new life into the character of Jason Voorhees, appearing as Jason in 4 separate films. Also, fun little fact for nerds like myself, he also was the guy wearing Freddy Krueger's claw when the gloved hand comes up and pulls Jason's mask down to hell at the end of Final Friday. And then he also, after that film, no longer played Jason, unfortunately, due to just politics and other bullshit. But because Kane is well known to be one of the absolute best Jason Voorhees in the series, he was welcomed back by the 2017 video game developers for Friday the 13th, the game where he portrayed, again, Jason Voorhees and was responsible for all the mocap acting for every single kill in that badass video game. And if you want to watch a really great documentary, I would invite everybody to watch To Hell and Back, the Kane Hodder story. Because it's not just about Friday the 13th. It's actually a really great motivational piece about how to overcome childhood trauma and personal disaster and misfortune. Because Kane Hodder, not only is he badass, but the dude has been through some absolute shit. Involving a really bad accident, including a fire. He was supposed to be putting on a fire stunt for a news interview, and the fire goes awry. And spoiler alert, Kane Hodder could have lost his fucking life because of a really freak accident involving a stunt fire. So I've been lucky enough to meet Kane Hodder and C.J. Graham and Warrington Gillette over the last couple of years. All super cool guys. And we went to a horror movie convention. And it's kind of cool to see these actors because they always rib all the fans walking around wearing shirts that are not the franchises they represent, right? So C.J. Graham is, again, a 6'3" tall guy. He's a former Marine, I think. Super intimidating guy. But he was just making fun of people left and right, coming up asking for autographs, wearing like, Michael Myers shirts and stuff like that. And I told him a story about how my friend Andrea, when we got to meet Freddy Krueger, why can't I think of his name? I'm blanking here. Robert Englund. Andrea wore a Jason Voorhees mask to go meet Robert Englund, and during this little session we had, Robert Englund in the Freddy voice is sitting there making fun of Andrea, saying, "You wore that little putty shirt into my house." And I was telling that story to CJ, and CJ's like, yeah, man, it's kind of fun to, rib people that we meet. And here's a fun fact. Did you know that Freddy Krueger's a fucking kitty diddler? And I was like, yeah, I guess so. He's like, no, seriously, man. In full lore, the guy's a fucking pedophile, right? And he's a pussy. Pretty fun shit, man. But yeah, man, we got to meet CJ and Warrington and Kane Hodder, and Kane Hodder's really fucking cool. And I got to tell him a story about how I almost fell off of a fucking ladder changing a light the first time I saw him in Jason Takes Manhattan, when he busts through that porthole or that window in the boat and goes to kill that chick. I had never seen the movie before. I was trying to hide the fact that I was from my parents. I was changing a light bulb on a ladder, and I happened to glance down on top of a 5-foot ladder and see Jason bust through the window, and it scared me so bad I slipped off the ladder, and just like, a comedy film, like my feet hit every single rung, and I was just like, the whole way down, and almost fucking fell off. So good shit. But Presto, honey, I told you I would tell you a fun fact of how David Bowie and Friday the 13th actually are related.
And I've lasted this long, so it's Christmas. Let me have my present.
This long, baby. So as let me have my present. So as a way to make sure franchise sequels don't get too soon, a lot of times film part of these movies before them out. A fun little fact here is, I think in the production of Part 3, they retitled Friday the 13th Part 3 as Crystal Japan after the song name of a David Bowie song. They used David Bowie's song titles to then disguise the sequel names of all the other Friday the 13th films so that people wouldn't catch wind that they were making sequels until they were ready to actually relay that information by showing, sizzle reels and trailers and stuff like that. So old David Bowie was used as code names for the Friday the 13th sequel.
Well, holy shit.
Yeah, and so that relates back to why I have this badass sticker of Jason Bowie.
Wow.
Anyway, we just crossed the 30-minute mark, and just like you asked for, baby. So we did it. I think your internet's back. Other than being just a little choppy.
Yeah, you're a little choppy tonight. I might have been a little choppy tonight, but I think we're good to go. So, next time let's hit the people with an hour. Let's slap them in the face with that hour-long dick and give her a go.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I imagine it'll be a longer show, man, because the topic I've been working on for the last month, the hole just keeps going deeper, and Shayla keeps hitting me with a lot of simulated news stories too. So might bet you a wooden nickel, hour and a half next time, pal. So make sure we both reset the modems before we record next.
Yeah.
All right, and folks, join us over on social media. On the Instagram, we are at PXL Paranormal. Join us on Facebook. We are the Pixelated Paranormal Podcast. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook. We have a Twitter. I don't think I've touched that thing in years. But also, you can find us wherever fine podcasts are downloaded. We are on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, whatever the fuck that's called, Spotify, and most of the other podcast apps. Presto, what do you got for me for Dobbs?
Need a beard, want a beard, want to grow the best damn beard possible? Do yourself a favor, go over to BigDobbsBeardBomb.com and use promo code PXLPARA for 20% off your order, and get yourself some scents like Bay Rum, Fresh, Citrus, Mint, Classic, Sweet Tobacco, and our new favorite, Spartan. Get it all, get it at Dobbs, use the promo code.
Boom shakalaka. Also, if you're in the Wichita area, go see our dear friend Leslie and the rest of the gang over at CD Trade Post, Pawnee, and Seneca. And if you are hungry for a little tasty treat, stop into paranormal.cafe. And if you see the food truck, Paranormal Experience on the streets, stop by, say hi, grab yourself some Squatch Tots. And with that, I'm going to raise this bottle of water and say cheers to the weird shit in the world and those of us that love to talk about it.
And stay spooky and stay on the paranormal highway.
The cast at Pixelated Paranormal would like to thank you for listening to this week's episode. Pixelated Paranormal is here to tell you tales of the fantastical, the strange, the unknown. Tales that will move you a little further down the paranormal highway. If you'd like to share your own listener story, we would love to hear it. Email us at pixelatedparanormal@gmail.com. Again, that's pixelatedparanormal@gmail.com. We'd really love to hear from you. Again, thanks for listening to this week's episode of Pixelated Paranormal, your guide to the unusual and the strange.